Hey there, welcome back to the Energy MD podcast, where we help you resolve your long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome naturally so that you can get back to living your best life. Hey, I'm Evan Hirsch, the Energy MD, and I'm excited to talk to you today about what you should do if you have treated your body and your home for mold and you're still not better. So, for a lot of people who have long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, even MCAS, it is recommended to assess yourself and your home environment for mold. So this means looking at what your environment is. Oftentimes, this starts off with some sort of test. So it could be an ERMI test, ERMI, or an EMA test, which is what I recommend because we can look at spores as well as mycotoxins and determine, in addition to history and symptoms, we're going to determine whether or not someone needs a mold inspector. And then a mold inspector will come in and look and see whether or not there's any mold present. So if that's the case, you find mold and you remediate your home and there's no mold or mycotoxins present, or you do the testing and you find that there's no mold present, then you test your body. That's the next test that you have to do is test your body to determine whether or not you have mycotoxins. And that's often done with a urinary mycotoxin test. We don't do that in our program, which I can talk about a little bit later, but that is generally the test that you would do, or you might do blood testing to determine whether or not you have some elevated markers that may or may not be related to mold. But regardless, you treat your body for mold. You may take binders, you may take glutathione, there might be some other things that you'll do. And you do a before and after test, and you find that you no longer have mold in your body, you no longer have mold in your home, and yet, and maybe you're a little bit better, but you're not all the way better. And the question is, why is that the case? And so one thing is that you may not have the mold and the mycotoxins completely out of your body because the testing isn't perfect. So the reason why this is the case is because the testing, the urine mycotoxin test, which I believe to be the best test, is a test that is based on your ability to detoxify. So if you are not able to get toxins out of your body, you are not going to show up with any mycotoxins in your urine. So you might believe that you no longer have mycotoxins in your body, but the reality is that they're still in your body. They just haven't come out in the urine because you're not detoxifying particularly well because you have other toxins that are present. So that's the first thing. The second thing is if you're looking at blood testing and you're looking at things like TGF beta or C4a, a lot of times these are not exactly due to only mold and mycotoxins in your body. They can be due to other things as well, other biotoxin illness as well. So they may be false positives or not just for mold. So that's something you have to consider. The other thing, and my main point in making this video, is that what I find with people who have chronic fatigue syndrome and long COVID and fibromyalgia and MCAS as well, is that they all have what I call are the toxic five. This is a combination of the heavy metals, chemicals, molds, infections, and nervous system dysfunction that builds up in the body over time. We come out of the womb with toxins already in our bodies. There are studies to show that we have over 300 different chemicals found in baby's cord blood, so in the placenta and consequently in the baby. And then there's the exposure that we have over time, with each of these toxins. Consequently, they end up causing nervous system dysfunction and immune system dysfunction, damage to the mitochondria that ends up causing fatigue, damage to muscles or they're in the muscles, causing inflammation, and then you get muscle pain. If they're in the joints, you get joint pain, etc. So if you address one of these toxins or infections in the toxic five, you will have improvement. It's kind of like having 20 different nails in the bottom of your foot, or let's say 5 nails in the bottom of your foot. If you pull one of them out, it's going to feel better, but the reality is that you still have 4 other nails that are still in the bottom of your foot, and it still hurts to walk, and it still hurts because you've got this pokey thing up in your foot. Okay, so the what I have found is that when we address all of the toxic five, we are getting at 95% of all of the potential causes out there. And the reason why I'm saying 95 and not 100% is because I'm sure there are other toxin, infection, nervous system dysfunction types of causes, causes that are out there that we just haven't determined yet. But we know that if we're going to be addressing the toxic five, we're going to be hedging our bets and we're going to be addressing 95 to 100% of all of the potential causes out there. Now, do you have adrenal gland dysfunction and mitochondrial issues and thyroid issues and sex hormone issues and vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies and lifestyle habit issues? Yes, you have all of those things. I do not consider those to be real root causes because all of those, except for lifestyle habits, are caused by the toxic five. So the toxic five is going to cause mitochondrial dysfunction. It's going to cause stress on the human organism, which ends up causing hormone dysfunction and hormone deficiencies, deficiencies in adrenal gland dysfunction and thyroid. It's going to cause autoimmunity to the thyroid and to the other glands as well. It's going to cause the vitamin and the mineral deficiencies, etc. So I don't consider those to be real root causes. They definitely need to be addressed. We have a four-step process that we take people through, where the first step is figuring out the causes that you have. The second step is replacing the deficiencies that you have. These are things that are not in the body that are supposed to be in there, like all the things I just mentioned, the hormones and the vitamins and the minerals and the mitochondria and the lifestyle habits and mindset. I consider all of those to be deficiencies when they are present. And then in step three, we open up the exit pathways. So we kind of have to open up the liver and the kidney and the lymph and the neural lymph that's in the brain and the gallbladder and the intestines. All of those have to be opened so that when we go into step four and we start removing the toxins, the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, the infections, that they have a place to go in order to be able to get out of the body. And that's how we can be successful. So my whole point in saying that is that the real root causes are the toxic five, and the toxic five all need to be addressed in my experience. And so consequently, the reason why I don't test anymore, as much anymore, I should say, because there's still some tests we do, but the reason we don't do as much testing is because I know the limitations of tests because I've been doing this for a decade, just focused on chronic fatigue syndrome. I've been practicing medicine for 2 decades. And we know the limitations of the testing for these toxins. A lot of them are urine tests. And so consequently, they're really dependent on your ability to detoxify. And then when we look at testing for infections, we're looking at the immune system's reaction. If we're looking in blood, we're looking at the immune system's reaction to a particular infection. And when you have chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID or fibromyalgia, your immune system is dysfunctional because you have the toxic five in your body. You have inflammation, which is comprised of immune system dysfunction. The immune system is distracted by the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, and the infections. And consequently, you're not going to get an accurate test when you are asking a dysfunctional immune system for an answer. Let me say this a different way. So, if your immune system is not functioning correctly because you have these toxins in your body that are causing immune system dysfunction, and then you do a blood test where you're asking the immune system to tell you about an accurate response to a particular infection, hopefully you can see that that dysfunctional immune system is not going to necessarily give you an accurate read, which means that you get a lot of false negatives, which means that there are these infections that are floating around in the body, but the immune system is not seeing them and consequently is not able to react to them and doesn't show up on a blood test. With the urine testing, and that's called a serology test. With the urine testing, oftentimes they're doing like a PCR test. So they're looking for the DNA of the infection, which sometimes is a better test, but it's really dependent on where the infection is located in the body. So if the infection is in the muscles and you are doing a urine test, you may not get that infection to be found in the urine. Okay. Yes, they recommend that you exercise, you get a massage prior, which can oftentimes liberate a lot of these infections out of the lymph system, and consequently, they can then potentially go into the kidneys and come out in the urine, but not always. So if they're in the joints, if they're in the muscles, if they're in the mitochondria, if they're in different parts of the body and they're not necessarily in the urinary tract system, you may not find them in the urine as well. And the same thing goes for the blood if you're doing a PCR test or a DNA test for that particular infection. Okay, so what I have found is that it's just better to treat. And oh, I should say the last thing too, the last reason why um, you may have these causes, or why you do have these causes, but they're not showing up on any of these blood testing, is because these causes are all bound up to each other. The heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, and the infections, I call that the toxic matrix. Because what ends up happening is that as you start to address one of these things, like let's say mold, you're starting to pull mold out of this toxic matrix, all of a sudden the rest of them start to get released. The heavy metals and the chemicals and the infections start to get released into the body. And you want to have coverage for those when they get released. So consequently, I find it to be more helpful to just address all of these. Use treatments that work, that are going to address all of the toxic five, and go through a process where we're addressing all of the viruses, all of the different heavy metals and the chemicals and the molds and the Lyme disease and the parasites and the bacteria and the spike protein. All those are being addressed. And then the last component that's really, really, really important is the nervous system retraining. This took me a number of years in order to acknowledge how important it is. But the people who do nervous system retraining, we have that now as a component of our program, and there's other standalone programs as well. People who do that, who do the nervous system retraining, get better faster. And for some people, they can address the heavy metals, the chemicals, the molds, and the infections all day long for the last 20 years, think they've done everything, and they haven't because they haven't addressed the nervous system dysfunction. So that's my approach, and that oftentimes is the reason why, if you've done one of these things, why you're not better. If you've treated your body and your home for mold and you're not better. Okay, it's because there's something that you're missing. So if you're interested in seeing if we're a good fit to work together, go ahead and click on the link below and check out my latest masterclass where I go deeper into my philosophy of care. And if you jive with what I'm saying and you want to see whether or not addressing the toxic five is going to get you to the finish line, you can get on a free call with me and we can talk for 45 to 60 minutes and see if we're a good fit to work together. And if we are, we can get started and we can proceed down this path. And it does require work. It does require dedication. Everything that we do is natural. I don't prescribe anymore. I operate online as a coach, even though I have my MD. And we work through a process, the four-step process of addressing all of the toxic five, providing you with a lot of hand-holding, a lot of support along the way with treatments that actually work, that are going to get you to the finish line. So go ahead and click that link below. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more great content like this. Thanks so much for paying attention, and I wish you all the best. Many blessings. I hope you learned something on today's podcast. If you did, please share it with your friends and family and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. It's really helpful for getting this information out to more people who desperately need it. Sharing all the experts I know and love and the powerful tips I have is one of my absolute favorite things to do. Thanks for being part of my community. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. It is provided with the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Thanks for listening, and have an amazing day.